As we approach a pond, we want to just kind of get an overview of what's going on. Want to check the fence, take pictures of any fence posts that are broken or missing, take a look at the embankments, checking your slope, finding out where there might be emergency spillways, pipes coming in, figure out what kind of BMP is around the riser. This is also a spot where it's going to potentially be wet. Whole pond is sloped to come down here. It doesn't look too bad. We're going to walk down in it. If I sink, we know the machine will sink. Looks like there is some water currently running through this pond. Got a little bit of water standing there. Cattails indicate that that spot right there is generally wet. The other thing we look for is, this is your riser. That means it's the outlet, and that means up this hill on the other side is the outfall. So a pond has multiple inlets. I don't see any here. I'm sure I'll find some. Generally has one outlet, which leads to an outfall, and that is here. And sometimes they're on the outside of the fence, sometimes they're on the inside. Regardless, if we can find a way to get to them to clean them up, we need to do so. This one we'd have to walk around the outside of the fence, but it's in good shape. We don't have to go in there. There's no vegetation. Now, on this particular pond, that's a problem, and we will report that to the county. But that is not something for us to take any concern on. So before we get started on this pond, we just want to make sure that we keep in mind the three major rules. I guess first of all, before we get into those rules, just know that every pond is different. The way you approach each pond is going to be different. But the three major rules of protection is protect yourself. Make sure that you never put yourself in danger. You're wearing the right gear and staying safe. It means safety glasses, sunglasses when you're weed eating. That means using your seat belts. That means making sure that you are always protected. Second is protect the machines. Do not ever put the machine in a place where you're going to flip it. It's a loss of day and expenses of repairing equipment when we're not being careful with our equipment. The third thing is protect the owner's property. That includes the fence, the concrete, and the ground. That means when you turn around, do so in such a way that you're not tearing up the ground. If you do, which you're going to, make sure that you are repairing it before you leave. Rule number one for getting stuck is don't get stuck. Rule number two is, because rule number one is often broken, make sure you have a plan for getting out. And in this pond, I'm looking at the embankment. I know that I can get a truck with a winch on it just about anywhere in here. I know that I can get a Mini X down in there and pull it out that way. But I want to make sure that I have a plan. So I'm going to usually mow the top of the embankment first. This embankment's not overgrown too badly, so I'm not too worried about that, but I'll do it just out of habit. Then we got to think about how we're going to mow the slopes. These slopes are not too bad. There's a couple spots that might be a little bit steep. Looking at riprap that's in here. I'm going to be looking for inlet pipes, and basically what I want to do is so that I'm not going back and forth and mowing the same ground more than once, I'm going to try to do the embankments with the ponds on this one. Some ponds you can do that, some ponds you can't. Hopefully we can do that on this. That'll save a ton of time if we can. So that machine's had plenty of time to warm up. Let's get in it and get started on this pond. All right, so I'm in the machine. I'm gonna make sure I've got my seatbelt fastened up. Of course, my lap bar's down. When I get into a pond, I mow that first round around the pond, around the perimeter. What I'm doing is I'm going about half or 3/4 of a mow blade away from the fence. That way, that first time through, I'm looking at the fence and making sure that if there are any posts that are broken, I can take a picture of that with grass around it and show that I didn't break it, that it was done before I got here. I'm also going to be checking for any kind of washouts, any kind of dangers, sometimes silt fences left in here, so I'm looking for metal posts. I'm going to keep an eye out for things that could cause damage to me, damage to my equipment, and damage to the property, because those are the three primary concerns for protection. So here we go. Idling it up, I want to give just a little bit of a turn, second time, and then slowly twist it all the way up. Be very gentle with that dial on these Takahachis. That dial is sensitive and can pop off, and that'll shut the machine down. Make sure your detemp light is on. That's the yellow light here to your left. Push the left button on the left joystick. That shoots your hydraulics through that mower, and off we go. So this is not really the lesson I wanted to teach by example, but I'm going to teach it anyway because it's here. But this pond is a whole lot wetter than it appears, and it's because it's dry where I walked in for the most part. It's wet out in the middle, and this pond's so small, I'm constantly having to turn around where it's wet. So I'm going to have to go in there with a rake and smooth out the ruts the best I can. Otherwise, next time I'm in here, it's going to be like riding on a corn cob, and then there's going to be water trapped in some of those ruts. And so one principle to keep in mind is always be thinking about next year. What are we going to need to do this year to make next year easier? The other thing is, there's a lot of areas here that I could have typically gotten, or would have typically gotten, with the brush cutter. But it's just so wet, especially along the edges of the embankment where the weight gets transferred to the back of the tracks if I'm going up a hill, that I would rather weed eat. As much as I hate weed eating, I'd rather weed eat than get stuck, because I hate getting stuck even more. So I'm gonna go grab the weed eater and weed eat, then I'm gonna grab the rake and try to smooth out some of my ruts. So I'm standing right near the outfall, or the outlet. The riser here is in those briars, and you can see quite a bit of water in this pond. Hear the frogs. Listening to Mother Nature reminds me it's this first walk through that you got to be careful for the snakes. When you're in here with a weed eater, that vibration, the machine drives your snakes away. But when you're just doing a walkthrough, watch where you step.